Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I want to take a moment and thank you for listening to or watching today's show. If this is your first time coming across the Pursuit of Manliness, I want to say welcome, and I'm incredibly thankful that you are here. When you get a chance, make sure you visit thepursuitofmanliness.com. There you're going to find all the information about Pursuit of Manliness. You can see what's available in the gear store, sign up for the email newsletter. You can also see the latest blog post. We have some men that are connected to the Pursuit of Manliness, putting out some really solid content there. While you're there, I want to encourage you to check out the gear store specifically for two things. Number one, our Point Man resource. This is the beginning of the year. If you're looking to lead your family spiritually, you say, man, I need to do a better job of that. I'm tired of having this husband guilt, dad guilt. You know, I got my grandkids now or whatever, and you want to lead them spiritually. Point Man is the resource for you. It's non-threatening. It sets you up to be the point man in your family to lead spiritually. We have Point Man Gospel of Mark, Point Man Book of Acts. There's 90 days lined out. You get a scripture each day that walks you through the book. You have 5 questions that go along with what you just read collectively. And there's even a suggested prayer. I know for some guys, if you've never prayed in front of your family before, or if you're trying to bring the younger ones in on, praying and stuff, that can be a little nerve-wracking. So it's a suggested prayer that you can use. Again, this is a resource to set you up to win. There's 2 of them available in the gear store. I also want to encourage you to check out One More Round and Building Better Men Together. They are also located in the gear store. These are video series designed to equip you to lead men spiritually. You watch the videos online. You can do it together. You can do it separately. There are discussion questions that can bring you together. These questions, again, are non-threatening. So regardless of where an individual is on their spiritual journey, whether they're just getting started or maybe they've been doing this for 2 or 3 decades, nevertheless, it brings us all together to have a collective conversation to talk about things men need to talk about. So One More Round, Building Better Men Together. And don't forget to visit armoredcoffee.com. Armored Coffee is a sponsor of the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, and Randy Levere is offering 25% off your order when you check out. So once you grab your coffee, your book, shirt, whatever you're going to get, and you go to checkout, put Pursue Manliness in the coupon code. It's all capital letters, Pursue Manliness. You save 25% off your order. I was able to talk to Randy recently and say, hey, how many guys are actually using that coupon code? And he said, man, it has been incredible to see the Pursuit of Manliness guys engage with Armored Coffee. I appreciate y'all doing that. So men, it's time for today's show. All right, man, at this time, I want to welcome Mike Povins to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. Mike, thank you for taking time and being on today's show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience. I know what an honor that is to be invited in and have a time to talk to your tribe and members. And I just want to thank you. I know the work that goes into doing these podcasts, and I really appreciate it.
Mike, you and I just prayed right before we started this conversation. One of the things that I often pray for is that the Lord knows everybody. He knows everybody. You and I did not know each other face to face like this prior to just a handful of minutes ago. And yet there's people listening to this podcast. They're going to encounter maybe you and I for the first time. Would you just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what kindles your fire, man?
Yeah, I'm Mike Povins. I live in the North Georgia mountains. I was joking with you earlier before we started that I don't ever say Atlanta anymore. I'm not much of a city guy. I'm more like the mountains and the lakes. And we've been here for the last 10 years. I've got a family with what my bride is actually my high school sweetheart. And we've been married for 21 years now. We've got 3 kids. My oldest is 17. She's about to head off to college. I got a son who's 16 and working on his muscles and his basketball game. And then I've got a daughter who's 11 in middle school, and she's pretty much going to be a CEO of some sort of company. That girl's she's got some tenacity, but yeah, we're having a good time, man. We lived in Colorado for a little bit, got a real bug for the outdoors out there. But the main thing we're going to be talking about today, and something I'm passionate about, is just the journey with men. It was about 4 years ago that that really hit me hard, and I can speak more to that.
Well, a lot of guys have that moment where, we wait till we hit rock bottom, but maybe we've already been there. So we're waiting for like a worse moment or I've shared my story on a number of occasions of how that kind of that wake up call. So you said about 4 years ago, what does that look like for you when you think back on 4 years ago? Forgive me, when things begin to change, maybe your focus, your efforts, your energy?
Yeah, 4 years ago was, and it's probably closer to five actually. I want to be a part of the conversation. I want to help influence and be a little more involved than just taking care of myself and my family. I think there's more conversations that need to be had among men. And so I had started an organization called Modern Chivalry Men, and it was more of a social media following. It was really my own personal journey on what it means to be a man. And I was doing some own self-discovery and just some deep reflection on, and it was all kind of triggered by seeing my son, grow up, and he was probably around age 10. And then seeing my daughters interact with boys and just seeing what social media and news and really paying attention to what is the influence on men out there, and including myself. So that was heavy on my heart, that I wanted to be a part of that conversation. But it was actually 7-8 years ago, if you talk about the kind of rock bottom, if you will. I really, was wrestling with, what am I missing in my life? I did not grow up on faith. I remember pulling into my driveway. You have those kind of big moments in your life. And I got the truck that I've always wanted to have. I pulled into my house. I'm very happy with the home that we have. I've got my beautiful wife and kids. And it's just one of those things that just felt like there's still this sense of emptiness. I'm like, why am I not just beaming with joy? And it really sent me on a spiral and my discovery of faith. And it's been an incredible journey. I actually got baptized 3-4 years ago now. I was a bit stubborn in this journey, but it's been life-changing and nothing but positive.
Well, you're in good company if you're talking about being stubborn and trying to figure this out. And a lot of men the same way. You talk about, I wanted to be a part of the conversation, I want to be part of the solution. I thought that when we created Pursuit of Manliness, we'd have all these men just come out of the, their deer stands and, their work and be like, yes, how do we get to, but the process is slow. I mean, there's an element of refining the message and really what your target audience is. And one of the things you talk about is kind of, looking back to the past or raising up this where we're at right now, but learning from those things. So how did you start to define that strength and character and all that, and say these are absolutes when it comes to, formulating a man in today's modern society?
I think a lot of it boils down to focus. I mean, getting like, what are all the aspects that I care about and that are meaningful? And that I did a lot of research before I launched my 12 values on that Modern Chivalry Men. Like, should it be 10, should it be 8? And if you look out there, values of a man, all kinds of, everybody is going to pick their own. I would encourage men out there to find what those are, and what do you think it means to be a man, and maybe kind of set that up and get those words to be there for motivation. I had picked a certain 12 for a couple of different reasons. One of them was I had a strategy of every month I was going to talk about one of those values. So I had 12 months and 12 values to talk about, and it worked out really well. But I do think it's important, because you can go day by day, and if you don't have that focus on who you want to be and the message you want to carry, and if you're a man of faith, the kind of faith that you want to represent, if you don't know what that is and what you're striving for, you're going to miss, and you're going to continue to just respond in the moment to things, as opposed to going into it with focus on the kind of character and strength that you want to bring to people.
Yeah, there's a fine line of learning from someone and copying them. You don't want to be a carbon copy of, someone that you look up to and say, well, I'm just going to act or live or look like them. But you can learn from them, and these people can influence us in positive ways. We can learn how to wrestle a bear and do all these things. But if we're losing our family, if we're losing, our children, if we're just as big of a schlub at work, but we own all the gear and everything. Nothing really changes. We say all the time, you'll know there's a difference when people notice the difference in your life. And so we get men, challenge them, get in the word and let the word change you, and the community changes you. But part of that is looking around at other people and saying, okay, there's a guy that I want to emulate his efforts and his focus. For you, man, who was the guy or two that you'd say that was a guy that I learned what it meant to be a real man from?
Yeah, I love that you're going this direction. It's amazing to me how often we look at sports figures, famous people, just different people that we're like, oh, I want to be like that star quarterback and have that life, or I want to, be like that, I don't know, The Rock. I don't know, somebody, from actually, I love that guy, but you know, I've actually been more inspired in my life from people that have come from redemption stories. There's a program here in town called No Longer Bound. It's for addiction recovery. And we've gone there. Part of that Modern Chivalry Men, it led to us doing some work locally with different charities. And I can't get enough of going back and spending time with those guys, going back. They are the epitome of, if you strip away everything in life that is not, we put value in money, we put value in things. I'm sucked into toys and fishing gear and all that kind of stuff. We put all these different idols, but you strip all that away and you're left at just who you are. I learned so much, and I'm inspired so much by the guys that I've seen go through that program. It's a faith-based program, and them leaning into God, leaning into Jesus to understand their identity in Christ. And candidly, I'm more inspired by guys that have been through some of the hardest stuff in this world and have come out of it and become great men and great fathers and great husbands, more so than these idols that we have that we put on pedestals. The thing about pedestals, man, people fall off pedestals all the time. These guys that I've learned and walked with, they're on mountains. You can't knock them off. You can't knock them off these mountains they've climbed.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about a coach that I like, and I have his biography, and I started to read it, and his dad was a great coach. His mom was an Olympian. He was all these, I can't relate to any of this stuff, and I think that's the average guy that I say all the time, that little analogy that God carried you down the beach, God dragged me down a gravel road. It wasn't this wonderful, and a lot of that was my own doing. I'm a sinful person. We live in a fallen world, but the story of redemption is a powerful story. And you're raising sons, you're pouring into men. How do you learn from the things that you look back and go, I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have done that. I wish I'd have got that 9 years ago instead of 8 years ago. How does that impact the way you parent and how you pour into other men right now?
And I could go on for a long time on this one. The reflecting, looking back as a man in his 40s, you look back and you go, man, how different would it have been if I'd known this or acted this way, or, been around the right people. Or one of the things that I think about a lot, and I'm trying to do more myself right now, is find mentors. I think so much as guys, we want to be that lone wolf. I know you just did a recent podcast. Sorry, I think his name was Rob, but we have this lone wolf mentality, and we're not. Look, I'm going to throw all the men under the bus here. We can be a bit stubborn and prideful, right? And we want to figure it out on our own. And somehow there's been this big lie sold to us that we're supposed to, as opposed to being surrounded by men and learning from each other. And if I have a weakness, it might be your strength. So why not lean into it and learn something? When I do the reflecting and looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I'd had more men in my life, or, we're seeking more men to be around. But it's hard. You got to have a bit of vulnerability, which does not come naturally to most men. We want to get together with the guys and go play golf, or, throw a football around, or play poker, or do something like that, and not get into anything too serious. But, some of those relationships and moving through those hard obstacles in life come from being in meaningful relationships with other men and being able to talk about really tough stuff. And so I kind of went a different way with that answer, I guess. But I think just, if I were looking back, one of the biggest things, and I can only encourage guys, especially in your 20s, when you think you're completely invincible and you got, you got everything ahead of you, just slow down for a minute and kind of take it all in and realize, all right, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And how am I doing in my relationships, and how am I doing in my primary relationship of my marriage, and how can I lean into other men to make all of this that much stronger?
And that's key, the relationships. I think, I'm in my 40s. So there's a point where you wake up one day and say, I think I have more time behind me than I have in front of me. I'm going to stop analyzing the past, or stop trying to figure out why I didn't do this sooner, and start thinking about, okay, this is what I have. And I think part of that comes in maturity. And hopefully with that maturity, not everyone gets this. Part of maturity is understanding that I don't have all the answers. You and I have a conviction to reach men. God has gifted us in different ways to try to reach them, have a message for them. But the reality is, Mike, you and I need each other. We need to challenge each other, encourage each other, because you're going to have skills, strengths, et cetera, that I don't possess. And this is kind of the heart of what you do. How do men, when they encounter what you're doing, what's the first step? What's the doorstep for you guys that say, okay, this is the start? Do you get into, for me, it was like a Facebook group, or was it, is it subscribing to Iron and Cotton, or whatever, a book resource? Like, what's the first step for guys to say, okay, this is what I'm about, and if you engage in this is what you can expect in return?
I think it's that courage to start being a bit vulnerable with someone else. And just that little, let something out. And if they bite on it and they actually respond, lean into that. And have the courage yourself to share things that you're struggling with. It is amazing. My wife and I have, especially, I would say more so with our faith journey, it's really exposed when we share something that we would be a little bit embarrassed by, or think was shameful or whatever. It's been amazing the response we've got on the other side, and with the whole "me too," or "oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that. I've been feeling the same way. I thought I was abnormal, or I thought I was, an idiot for thinking that, and then the real conversation in the relationship start going. So that's one thing. As far as, trying to reach a group, if you're a man that's, like the two of us here, that just feel like you got to get something out there and do more, just do it. Go back to the 80s commercial, or 90s, whatever it was, just do it. The Nike thing, like just start to take a step. Like, hey, you don't have to blow up a big podcast or start a big social media following. You can do those things if whatever you think speaks to you more and makes more sense to you. Smart. Maybe you're a reader. You like grab a book and be like, hey, I'd like to get 4 or 5 dudes together to go through this book. Who's interested? And whatever it is that you think, maybe it's a leadership book, maybe it's a faith-based book, maybe it's a book about money to help guys manage their money better, so they can be better with their families with that. So find something that makes sense to you, and maybe you can be on an outing. A lot of us like to go do outdoors things. Say, hey, we're going to go on a hike, but before we go on a hike, we're going to pray together, and we're going to take prayer requests, and then we're going to go on a hike. And then when we come back, we're going to close it out in prayer and see you guys next week, and we'll do it all over again. So whatever you think would be a good fit for you, now is the time. We got a lot of men out there that are hurting. We got a lot of men out there that are trying to do stuff on their own. We just went through COVID. People have lost their jobs. People have been sick. People have, there's still a lot going on that's creating a lot of stress and anxiety for people. And we all need each other in a bad way. And we need men to step up to lead their families, lead other men, and be there for each other.
Well, let's change this a little bit, because men like this idea. I'm at home right now. Everyone else is gone. And I was going upstairs to record this podcast. And what do I need? And it takes me 14 trips to make sure I have everything I need. And I saw my Bible, and I thought, I don't need that, because, I know what we're going to talk about, and we're not doing a Bible study right now, so I didn't need that. But then I saw the bag that has my weapon in it. I always have a weapon. That's what I do. I don't know what George's laws are, but that's what I do. So if you're not a weapon guy, that's fine. I thought, well, I got to take that. I am. Okay, I got to take that, right? Because I'm at home alone. If somebody tries to break in, that would be a great podcast if somebody tried to break in while this happened. And I thought to myself for a moment, why on earth would you say I got to take my weapon, but I'm not going to bring the Bible? Okay, so I say all that to get to this point. You talk about a pocket knife, a handkerchief, which I'm a fan of both of those. What are some things for you that is your everyday carry that you say, this is part of being a man? Like, I remember when someone said, you carry your license with you at all times. And I said, okay, that's a mom. What do you got, man?
Yeah. So, by the way, I do have my concealed carry, and I'm absolutely, and I'm a Springfield guy. Okay. So, but this is my everyday carry. So I do have a pocket knife and a handkerchief. I carry it as talismans and reminders of the kind of man that I want to be. So the pocket knife to me represents the strength and utility, protection that I need to offer. So there's a lot of just firm things about a knife that reminds me of what I need to be firmly rooted as a man and what I need to offer. And then the handkerchief, which is something that somebody might go, oh, that's gross, man. You're blowing your nose in that and all that. And no, I've used that handkerchief more to wipe the sweat off my brow from hard work. I've used that handkerchief for wiping my wife's tears or my child's tears. There is a number of compassionate things that a handkerchief can do in your life. It can be a bandage on a wound at your kid's game, or, somebody else's kids get hurt. There is a number of uses for that handkerchief. And so I like that. I like carrying around that compassionate tool, and I like carrying around that strength tool. So yeah, the book I wrote is called Iron and Cotton, and that's that whole symbolism is a reminder to bring strength and compassion to everybody you meet.
I too am a knife and handkerchief. Now, I use mine to wipe the coffee off my mustache a lot because I didn't want to speak; it would start. But you're right. There's so many uses for that. I take pride in carrying a pocket knife. No one ever taught me that. I just decided one day I see other men doing it that I look up to. I'm going to start doing it. And every time someone says, hey man, you got a knife? Can I borrow your knife? Of course. And I remember one time going to a daughter's volleyball game. Dad, you got your knife? And I didn't. I had done something right before we left and I forgot it. And I sat for 2 hours miserable. I felt like I failed my daughter. I did not bring my knife. That will never happen again. So I got it right. I just took it out of my pocket because but that idea that you're carrying that with you, as you just mentioned, those two words, strength and compassion, those are just as essential to have with you as the actual physical things that we carry on us or in our car, backpacks, whatever. What does that look like for you, modeling strength and compassion as a man, with my words and with my actions?
Sure. I think, and I get into this a little bit with the book I wrote, is just paying attention to. Look, we typically, and again, I say I'm throwing men under the bus with this when I say we. I've just, walked with a lot of men. I think we handle things very similarly sometimes. We come to things and we want to bring our strength. We want to bring our answers. We want to bring the solution. And not often enough, and I throw myself under the bus here, I'm guilty of doing all that. And I'm not bringing the compassion. I'm not bringing the ears to listen. I'm bringing my mouth to speak way too often. And, so where I'm passionate about is topics like marriage, right? So when we look at conversations with our wives, and if I'm going to bring something, if I'm going to have the tools to get through my marriage and be carrying something with me, it gets down to three things. It's patience, understanding, and forgiveness. And so where I carry physically a pocket knife and handkerchief, I'm mentally always thinking about, all right, am I being patient? Am I being understanding? And am I ready to forgive? Those are tools that I am definitely working on. I'm not very patient. I want to get to the answer. I want to get to the solution. I'm going to probably interrupt my wife before she finishes, because I've got that answer, right? I'm not going to be patient. And sometimes she just needs to talk. She just needs to get it all out. She's not looking for me to give her an answer. And then understanding is another tool. That was a hard one for me to learn. I thought I understood things. I thought I had a good perspective on things. And it took us going through postpartum depression with one of our children for me to really embrace the idea of understanding. There was something I wasn't understanding for me to realize I don't have understanding in my marriage or in my relationship with my wife, that she's going through something that she doesn't have good control of and that she needs help with. And and then forgiveness, one of the biggest tools, and I call it the sledgehammer of tools, because it will break down walls. And what I mean with that, an example I'd give you is, I bet if I asked you, what is those 1-2 things that you did in your life that you wish you were forgiven for? I mean, if you could hear the words, you are forgiven for that, how big would that be and how impactful would that be in your life? And I'm just asking that kind of out loud. It would be huge. It would move mountains for you to be able to be forgiven for that 1 or 2 things that you look back on going, man, I just regret that. That was the worst mistake of my life. So don't underestimate the power of forgiveness, and offer it often. It's something that Jesus did for us. I think it's something we should be considering and thinking about that we should do for others. So those are the three big tools emotionally, I think, and mentally we should be carrying.
Yeah, I think that's really good because for a number of men, that's a hard thing to think that I can actually be forgiven because we know what a mess we are. And I think sometimes that's why we put on you either go lone wolf or put on the, bravado that's just a little over the top at times, that we know our weakness. We talk about, that's why so many times in scripture, when men were laying down and sleeping, that's where God got them, because you could not be more vulnerable than when you're laying in your bed at night staring at the ceiling. And the Lord says, okay, now he's done. Now I'm going to speak to his heart. And so understanding that forgiveness and the power of forgiveness, and not until you really grasp that your sins can be forgiven, that it's not counted against you anymore, can you really demonstrate forgiveness for others. And it doesn't mean we're a chump. It doesn't mean that we, keep walking in that same, that we don't keep allowing certain things to happen to us, but we need to model that forgiveness because we have been forgiven. And man, if men could grasp that, we'd have a whole different culture of marriage in this country.
You hit on a point. I think we should back up. You're not a chump. Forgiveness is not weakness. I think a lot of times we think of forgiveness as some sort of form of, oh, I gave in, or they won, or what happened was okay. When you're having to forgive, it's not saying what happened was okay. It's acknowledging and saying, okay, we're at a new starting point here, and that was awful and whatever happened, but it's forgiven. Okay. But, and you really got to let things forgiven means there's no debt to be paid anymore. There's no I forgive it, but I'll never forget, kind of comment, and you still owe me. No, and forgiven means it's done. It's not to be brought back up. It's not you got to free that out of your heart. And that's true forgiveness, but it is not a you lose and they win kind of scenario. It is strength to show that I can forgive, and I can move forward in life, and I can grow from this, learn from this, and we can be better, especially in our marriages. We can be better for these mistakes that happen. We can be stronger, and we can help guide other people through mistakes because we figured out how to forgive each other and move forward with that. I've seen some incredible stuff in some of the marriages around us where they've forgiven things that you don't think could be forgiven, and they have moved forward, and they are beasts when it comes to being couples. I mean, absolute beasts. They can take on the world because they figured out how to get through some of these things.
If you have your marriage right, or not perfect, but you get your marriage right, where you're communicating with your bride, you're protecting, you're allowing no one or anything else to come between the two of you. There's not a lot that can divide you at that point. Other relationships, you could be killing it at work and in the community, but if your marriage is off, it's all off. You got to get that right. I mean, God takes the ministry of marriage incredibly serious, even if we do not.
So, man, you can have a bad day at work, but if your marriage is rock solid and you're coming home to a loving, supportive family,
yep,
that job's not going to destroy you. But if things are going great at work and you come home and your marriage sucks, you're distraught, you're stressed. You don't want to go home. It is. So often we put work as the primary part of our identity and our, sometimes it's easier to be, I think I stole this quote from my dad. It's easier to be a man at work than it is at home. Yep. And, you get more success and accolades and things sometimes at work than you do at home. And we really got to, twist that and flip that over and invest more in our relationships and at home. But the problem is a lot of us don't have those tools. We didn't see a good marriage modeled out before us sometimes, or, there's been influences from all over that have twisted what a good marriage looks like and what it can be. Some of us have never even seen one, don't even know what it looks like, and have no idea. They think this is as good as it gets. I've heard of divorces, separations, and loveless, sexless marriages, and that just must be how it is. And it's not true. You need to keep looking, keep digging, keep reading. There are incredible marriages out there that will bring you great strength, great joy, and great adventure and fun. So, amen. As you can tell, I'm a little passionate about this topic.
trying to let you talk because I'm fired. I'm getting fired up. I appreciate you
fired up
that,
with me.
I like think that we hand this stuff down to the next generation like it's some family recipe to be replicated. It's a family brush pile. You have created a culture of chaos. And at some point in our life, especially if when the Lord has shown you other examples of people who are at least trying to get it right. For me, a phrase I use a lot, and there's different portions of scripture where you see this happen, is a line in the sand moment where you say, oh, we are not going to live like that no more. And until a man decides we are not going to live like this no more, if she leaves me, it's because I was the godliest husband I could possibly be. If my kids want to have nothing to do with me, it will not be because it was a lack of effort. If they fire me today at my job, I'm still married to my bride. I still have my children. If you get your identity from where you park your car and that's it, you are a small man because you are replaceable at work. And believe me, men find this out every single day. But unless you're willing to draw that line in the sand and say, I'm not going to live like this no more, nothing changes. You hit on a point. If you've never seen a marriage that's good, how do you know what it looks like? So that's something we said that if it's hard to lead someone on a journey where you've never actually gone yourself. So brother, how did you start charting that path? And I know we've hit on a little bit of this, but how do you start charting that path that you were kind of the point man? You had to go through some stuff to figure out, okay, this is a path that people that come from behind can follow now.
Yeah, for me, it was a path I fell into by mistake. Imagine I'm just hiking along and I fell down a hill and I found some other path and I was like, where's this go? That's this was not intentional or purposeful in any means. And that's where I would tell men, seek it intentionally and purposefully because it is there. Just know that there is another path to be taken. The one you've been on may be good and all that, but keep looking around, keep researching, talk to people, read books. I was going to reference you mentioned something. My book, I tried to, there's some faith reference in there, but it was written in a way that I want non-believers to be able to pick it up and read it and believers to pick it up and read it. It's very born out of faith for me, but for the guys that are Christ followers, I definitely recommend a call from Peter Burke, Your Marriage Matters to God. And it goes to what you were referencing earlier. No matter if my marriage fails, I'm still going to be the most godly man I can be. And I'll tell you, this book really hits on a lot of key points on how to do that and bring that into your marriage and do some things from a very good faith standpoint and what God says about marriage. So I definitely encourage you to check out that book. But for me, yeah, it was that path that I was on. It was all of a sudden I was walking with friends that were going through divorce. As you get older, you go to the marriage, you go to the weddings and everybody's all excited. And then somebody falls off and goes into divorce. And then another one falls off and goes into divorce. And then you're seeing your marriage do some rocky things and you make it through and you start hanging out with other couples. There's just kind of this journey. And if you're paying attention, you see some people seem to be doing well, some people not so much. And I just got real curious. And why is that so? And a big part of that journey for me was, I don't feel very prepared. Or I look back and I'm like, I don't know that I was really prepared for all this. So that led me down the path of doing a lot of homework. And what led to me writing this book is I want to prepare men better for the journey because it can be epic or it can be really tragic, if you're not prepared for things and going into them with a little more eyes wide open. So that's where the book was born.
The thing to remember, whether you're a believer or not, and I hope you are, I hope you surrender to Jesus, but whatever, if you're not, we have guys and gals that are not. How's this working out for you? You look at the path you're on, and there's some men who believe it all works out in the end. Believer or not, there's no guarantee that all things are working out in the end. Scripture tells us the only way it works out in the end is in Christ. So apart from Christ, you have your own idea, your own path. How well is that going to go for you? Think about the next generation. I want to someday sit in my kids' homes, not seeing them model the stuff that I didn't repent of and I just repeated because I was lazy. I want to see them modeling health. I want to see them having the best marriage they can. I don't want to sit there and go, oh man, they got that from me. They got that from me because I was too lazy or too apathetic to do something about this. So it's like what we tell men, being a man's hard and being a man is tough, but listen, it's a high calling and people depend on us to get this right. And so, you talk about your marriage and stuff, you can look at people and say, they must have it all together. Well, perception is not always reality. and you know within your own home, how well is this really working out? One of the best ways we can do is call audible, sit down with your wife and say, how are we doing? Or having a conversation or kind of gauging that. What are some things for you that you say, hey, we're clicking, we're moving in the right direction when these things are happening?
Yeah, your point is sit down with your wife and do that calibration check. I can't encourage that enough. We get definitely depending on stage of life that you're in. We're in that busy stage of life, kids sports. I feel like we're WWE that I used to watch back in the day. Tag me in, I'm tagging out, and you're going here, I'm going there, and get home from work, and you want me to pick up some food, or what are you throwing together? It becomes a blur. And if you don't make time for you and your wife, the most important relationship in that household is you and your wife. If you don't make time for that, if you're not checking in with each other, if you're not continuing to date your wife, it's just like, anything else in our lives. If I don't take care of my car, if I'm not taking care of the maintenance, I can't just expect to go jump in the car and it's going to just get me there. I'm going to start having problems, So your marriage is no different in that. You've got to work on the maintenance and doing the checking in. So, but have fun with the checking in. It doesn't have to be these, we need to sit down and have this serious talk. Do the checking in and, take her out and go, let's just, I call them micro dates now. Like, hey, let's just go out. Let's just have a quick dinner and just catch up a little bit, get away from the kids. And not that we don't love our kids, but create that separation. And try to maybe even disconnect a little bit about the conversations about the kids all the time. Like, how are you doing? What's on your mind? Where are you at? What can I be doing better to help you, be your partner in this life? Simple things like, hey, would it help? I can tell you get really stressed out and or around the kitchen with things. Maybe I can start helping a little bit with putting some of these dishes away. Or it seems like my wife actually loves doing laundry. It's some sort of, she loves, there's something just where she can just disconnect and just, focus on doing something that she feels is helping the household. But definitely the kitchen just can drive her mad. So I try to wade in there as much as possible. She's got enough things stressing her out. Maybe I can get in there. Maybe it's, checking questions on money continue to be very pervasive in marriages. And if you're trying to have those conversations when things are stressful about money, they get even worse. But if you have like hey, let's have a conversation before things get stressful and do a checking in on that, you can, avert some of the crisis. I talk about in my book, I won't get into depth here, but I go at it a little bit differently. I think we need to better understand our emotions around money so that we can better manage money. And that involves getting into the history of how did you grow up with money versus how did your wife grow up with money? And I'll tell you, it's been super eye-opening in relationships that I've been around, and even for my own, to go, oh, that makes sense why you're this. You grew up, scraping for every penny. Versus a family didn't. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but definitely do those checking ins. Keep dating your wife. Those are huge things to keep your marriage flying.
And this is why relationships are so important. First of all, relationship with my creator, understanding who my identity is in him, that the reality is, this is glorified dust that I'm a part of. And so I go to a work or whatever, he's given that to me. Community is so critical for men. You can tell guys things that your wife may not understand just because there's things that you're saying to me. I'm nodding my head yes for most of them, like, yep. If we were in a room full of women, they may not resonate with the way that we're saying things or the emotions that we're carrying. I say all that to get to the point that there are things, if we told God more things, we would need to tell other people less things. But there are things that we need to tell men or have conversations with men that will iron sharpening iron. There are times we need to come into the home and be mindful that we're to love and to lead. And I can't bring the dust of my day into my house and just vomit my life onto my wife and say, oh, get this. And our kids and our wives, they're carrying their own stuff. And it's our job to be there physically, but also emotionally, mentally, relationally, spiritually, et cetera. It's a high call to take a wife. It's a high call to invite children into your home. It's a high call to lead your home spiritually. So we need to know that it's our job to be the nurturer. If the temperature of the house isn't right, it's up to us to start going, okay, what can I do about this? I'm not fixing my wife. Maybe I need to fix my prayer life or ask different questions. So it's a high call for men to do this, right?
For sure, it is. I got a great tip that I would share. A lot of the gear grinding that happens is that transition of coming home from work. She's coming home from work, you're coming home from work, or if she's a stay-at-home mom, you're coming home from work and she's been home all day. There's this gear grind of changing into that life together. One of the tips I got, and I want to, I think, give credit to Reggie Campbell's book, What Radical Husbands Do. Definitely encourage that read as well. But it said 5 feet for 5 minutes. So when you come in the door, go be 5 feet from your wife for 5 minutes and engage with her as the most important relationship and understand her day and how things have been going for her without throwing up all over her of, oh, why didn't this get picked up? Or why didn't this bill paid? Or I'm going to complain about work and I had the worst day. Just go there and just be focused and intentional about that time with your wife and about her day and what's going on with her, and let her talk. Don't solve all her problems, and just start right there. That the 5 love languages thing, figure out what your wife's love language is. My wife's, her number one is words of affirmation. If I can come home and give her words of affirmation and remind her that she's a great mom, she's great at what she's doing, and be sincere about it. You need to be sincere about these things. Things are going to go a lot better than if I come home in the door, I don't give her any words of affirmation. I go immediately into some sort of hobby or way to disconnect because I've been stressed out at work. Look, we need those disconnects from work. I get that. We need our time. You can find ways to do that without shunning your wife out or shutting your wife out.
My wife says words of affirmation too, which is a guy who, I got nothing. So, yeah,
we struggle. You and I are the same.
I'd bring you a coffee. No words of affirmation. So you're right. When I get home, I try to anchor into the kitchen or what. That's kind of the hub of everything that's going on. And so,
sure.
Mike, I appreciate you making time, man. How do we get in contact with you, your website, your book, what you're about? How do men find you?
Yeah, I would say check out ironandcotton.org. That's my website. That's going to kind of direct you to what I'm all about. Like I mentioned earlier, I had originally launched with a site called modernchivalrymen.org. That was, I would say that's more of the past of, it's still content that you can check out. There's good stuff there. But if you want to see where I'm going now and what I'm doing new now, it's ironandcotton.org. You can go to Instagram at ironandcotton. I'm on Facebook too, but more Instagram than anything else. And then my book is on Amazon. Just you can search Iron and Cotton. Now you're going to see some ironing boards and you're going to see some irons and stuff, but you can either search my name, Mike Povens, or you can search for Iron and Cotton, and about 3 or 4 down, you're going to find my book there and check that out. But I highly encourage you to check the book out and read it. Look, it's an everyday man's kind of guide. It is, something just to get your mind spinning a little bit, thinking, be a little more proactive and a little more intentional and purposeful about things about marriage. I originally wrote it for my son to be able to give it to him when he was of age, and for my future son-in-laws, because I want to make sure they take care of my daughters. The whole idea was to be able to hand it to our sons. But since it's been out there, I've had a lot of guys say, hey, I needed to read this. I got a ton out of it. So if you've been married just recently, I would absolutely encourage you to pick it up, but try to avoid some of the pitfalls that so many of us guys fall into. If you've been married for a while and maybe on another second marriage, yeah, man, pick it up. There might be a nugget or two in there. And if I can ever be of service to anybody, my email is on that website.
And we'll put those links in the show notes. So if you're watching this or listening to this, just click the link. It'll take you right there. I'm not very tech savvy, so I need all the help and shortcuts I can get to get me where I need to go. Mike, thank you, brother, for taking time today. Being on the show is a blessing to get to talk to you face to face and hear your heart. And thank you for what you're doing for men.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate what all you're doing out there to help guide men. And I really appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Once again, men, thank you for listening to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show. All the links mentioned in the intro and in the conversation will be in the show notes. If you would, make sure that you click subscribe to never miss any Pursuit of Manliness podcast content. And as always, I really appreciate when you share this show with your friends, whether your social media feed or you text it to a buddy or email, whatever, just letting them know, hey, this is a conversation that I believe you would benefit from. So men, Thank you. Thank you for helping us build better men together, and let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.